is your primary concern for the Niners 2 weeks into the season? Because there's a lot of hand-wringing about Shanahan. There's a lot of hand-wringing about Purdy. And yet I would not park my, concern bus on the corner of Shanahan and Purdy. But I do have a number of other concerns. Without me leading you in any direction, what are your major concerns 2 weeks in?
Some red flags with this football team, no doubt. And it starts and ends, I think, on the offensive side of the football with the offensive line. I'm very confident that Brock Purdy is a legitimate quarterback in this league. I think that obviously the Niners probably have the most well-rounded and talented skill position group in the NFL when everybody is healthy. I don't think that Christian McCaffrey is going to see the field for a little while. Deebo Samuel now has a calf strain. George Kittle has a hamstring injury. And so that depth and that star power has taken a hit. But when they're on the field, I'm very confident in what the Niners can do there because I've seen it. And so the offensive line concerns me because week one, they were excellent against the New York Jets. Pass protection, they were awesome. Running the football, they were incredible. And after that game, I had posed this question to my audience on the 49ers report. Is that a sign of things to come, or is it a mirage? And then they come out against Minnesota, and I get it. It's an early game on the West Coast. It's a short week, but you knew what Minnesota was going to do. Brock Purdy even said that to you yesterday. We were very familiar with the scheme because we saw the scheme last year. And the Niners come out and they were ill-prepared to go up against it. And that's, of course, on Kyle Shanahan because he hasn't figured it out against Brian Flores, Steve Spagnuolo, or Jim Schwartz. He's really struggled mightily against the top 3 defensive coordinators in the game. But the offensive line didn't really give Brock Purdy a chance in a lot of those passing situations last week. And I know that he was holding onto the ball for a long time, and the lack of receiver separation is, of course, a concern. But the twists and stunts that the Vikings are running up front, the Niners were completely caught off guard. And I've seen this team in the biggest of games struggle up front against top-tier defensive lines. And when you get into the playoffs, you are going to be playing against teams who are built strong in the trenches. And Jake Brendel is not good enough. I know Chris Forster said to you that he does X, Y, and Z, listed off 9 or 10 things that he does better than Ben Barch and Nick Zakelj and Drake Nugent. But he's the lowest graded center in the NFL. And then Colton McKivitz, a year after having nearly 50 pressures given up, he gives up 6 pressures last week. And I know that John Feliciano was on X and said, when I retire, I'm going to do a YouTube show and I'm going to break down the nuances of offensive line and I'm going to call people out who are wrong. Look, I don't think we're wrong about this offensive line. It's been bad here over the last couple of years. The Niners have said as an organization, we'd rather invest in players who score touchdowns than offensive linemen. Now you paid Trent Williams, you used a second-round pick on Aaron Banks, and a third-rounder on Dominic Pooney. That's great, but Jake Brendel was a journeyman center for a reason, and Colton McKivitz is a swing tackle. I don't think he's a starting right tackle for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. And so when you go up against these good defenses, we have seen this offensive line struggle. Now, the protections and sometimes the scheme and the pass game and the nuances to it, it struggles, and that's partially on Kyle Shanahan against these good defenses. But regardless, I'm concerned about the offensive line. And then on the other side of the football, a couple of things defensively. They are giving up 59% of third down conversions. That is 31st in the NFL. And Nick Sorensen has never called plays prior to this year as a defensive coordinator. He's never been a defensive coordinator. And I think so far, he's been a little bit in over his skis. And when you ask him, is the plan to have George Odom in the slot against Justin Jefferson, and he can't give you an answer, that's alarming to me. Because the answer should be, we should never have George Odom on the best wide receiver in football, as Odom is slow, and he's been a career special teamer for a reason. You have Diamador Lenore and Charvarius Ward. You have Isaac Yiadom, and you're going to line up George Odom in the slot against Justin Jefferson? It's a concern. Niners rushing defense still has some holes. They can't get after the quarterback yet. Now, Nick Bosa had 2 sacks last week. Leonard Floyd was good in week 1. But if you can't generate a pass rush and you can't stop the run and you can't get off the field on third down, that's a concern. And I thought you made a great point last week when we were on the show. And we're talking about how the Niners defense did look good against New York. But you said something that really stood out to me. And you said, I want to see how this defense does when they have to be on the field longer than the 18 minutes that they were on the field against the Jets, because San Francisco dominated time of possession and they had the ball for 38 minutes. And we saw that this Niners defense, when they were on the field a lot, couldn't get off the field, and they struggled against one of the top offensive minds in football, and Kevin O'Connell. So those are some concerns that I have. And then obviously the injury issues, because there's kind of a 2020 vibe right now going on with this Niners team.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I didn't love the stonewalling. I hate people who kind of stonewall. So I asked Forster about Brendel. He backs Brendel. He's the right guy. Okay, fine. I asked, Sorensen about, the 97-yard touchdown, and he didn't really give me an answer of why Odom, who seems to be like the last guy I'd want matched up with Jefferson, why he was matched up with Jefferson. Then I asked Purdy about the numbers that Kev had on Twitter this week, showing that the 49er receivers are dead last in the NFL as far as separating.
Yep.
And, I didn't expect Brock to say, yeah, my receivers can't separate. He's not going to throw his receivers under the bus. But he's like, I don't even know that I would even agree with those stats. And, because I said, well, based on the film, and, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? And in a way, I shouldn't have asked that question, because it's like, he's not going to say, yeah, man, the receivers aren't getting separation. I still got to throw the ball. And that means I'm throwing way more 50-50 balls, which means I'm going to have way more turnovers. But guess what? All those things are true. So, in a way, I kind of wish they would, I asked Sorensen about the terrible Naylor touchdown for 10 yards where both guys jumped the flat. I'm like, why was that such a confusing play for you guys? You got one receiver, you got two receivers on that side of the field. One ran to the flat, one ran to the corner. You guys acted like it was some ridiculous wrinkle you'd never seen before. And that was a busted play. It was basically the Niners had 3 or 4 busted plays on defense. Yep. And if they didn't have those play busts, they would have won the freaking game.
Yep. And they would have won the game despite playing terribly offensively and defensively. And so,
right. And special teams.
It's the special team. Like the fact that Kyle Shanahan continues to ignore special teams, it really irks me, because it really matters, and it has really cost San Francisco during his tenure in some really big spots. And if you ask Bill Belichick what the importance of is for special teams, he'll talk for 20 minutes about it. And Kyle Shanahan kind of continues to ignore that phase of the game. And so that bothers me. And that's part of Kyle Shanahan's downfall so far as the Niners coach, is that he is pretty stubborn and he's lacked making adjustments. And that has kept the Niners from reaching their peak. And they've been a flawed football team because he hasn't made some of those adjustments. Great coach. People calling for him to be fired, I think it's absolutely insane. I don't even think he's overrated, but he does have some flaws, that's for sure.
Okay, so keys to victory in this game. Let's get back to the matchup. I came up with these. Tell me what you think. I'll just roll through mine real quick. I think you got to pressure Stafford with 4 because he gets rid of the ball in 2.66 seconds.
Yeah.
And so don't send a bunch of extra guys at him. That just gives him defined reads and more room in the coverage. I think you got to get it done with 4. You got to drop 7, and you got to be smart about things. But 2.6 is when the ball's coming out. So you're not going to sack that guy a lot. You got to stop Kyren Williams as a runner, but I think more importantly, I think he's going to be in the slot quite a bit. I think you got to stop him as a receiver. You got to do what you couldn't do last week. Last week, you let Jefferson get over the top. You can't let Tutu Atwell's even faster get over the top. And then offensively, you got to block this combo off the edge. Verse and Young, Byron Young's a second-year player, Jared Verse, a first-year player out of Florida State. Both those guys are excellent off the edge, and they're fast
as well.
260 pounds.
Yep.
What were you gonna say?
Brayton Fisk as well. We liked him in the pre-draft process.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, he's got a tremendous motor. You got to really establish the run with Mason and pound the Rams in the run game repeatedly and continuously. And I'd give him a ton of carries this week because the Rams can't stop the run, and they can't stop the run to such a level where the Niners should win this game just on that alone. But I think number 6, you got to get Ayuk going. He's got to get going at this point. I think the Niners defensively got to play a lot of stunting and twisting games up front. The Rams offensive line's a mess. Limmer, the Arkansas rookie, is the starter at center. Logan Bruce is the starter at guard. They haven't played very much. I think you got to play games up front, make them communicate. The Niners have to continue to dominate the time of possession, protect that defense. They got to get off the field on third downs. The Niners giving up 73% on 3rd and 7 or longer. And if the rest of the league's at 22%, that's totally unacceptable. They got to get off the field on 3rd and long. And then I think Kyle's got to pick on Cam Kitchens, the free safety. I watched all of the Rams preseason games and both of their regular season games in the last 3 days. And the film shows that Kitchens, the rookie from Miami, takes a lot of false steps. And then I think you got to make sure you don't have huge gaffes on special teams. And then on the perimeter, you got to be better on the back end communication-wise. Hafanga's return will help that. And offensively, you just got to get more separation than they've gotten thus far. Otherwise, you're going to be Brock's going to be throwing 50-50 balls all day, and 2 turnovers is going to be par per week. Give me a key or two that you see, maybe either that I covered or that you like that I didn't cover.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff right there. And the fact that the Niners are giving up that high of a percentage on 3rd and long, it is inexcusable for a defense that has so much talent and so much money invested in the front, invested in the linebacking core, and invested in the secondary. I think it's really important to get to Matthew Stafford. The Rams are so beat up that their receiving core looks as such. Demarcus Robinson is now their number 1. Jordan Whittington was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school, but he was always injured at Texas, a late round pick. He's pretty much their number 2. Tutu Atwell is also one of their top receivers, and there was chatter that he wasn't even going to make the 53-man roster. And then along their offensive line, they invested a lot of money in the offensive line this offseason, and unfortunately for them, they are so injured. Guys like Joe Noteboom and Steve Avila, they are really banged up front. So you got to be able to get to Matthew Stafford. And if you can get home with 4 and you muddy up the pocket, you know that he's prone to turning the football over because that's been his entire career. And receiving wise, he doesn't have Puka Nacua to throw to. There is not going to be Cooper Kupp in this game. Tyler Higbee is still out. He's on IR to start the year because he suffered that ACL, MCL injury late last year. So this is a Rams team that is very light as far as skill position talent goes. But then their offensive line, which you thought was going to be a strength going into this year, is no longer because of all of the injuries. But Matthew Stafford is still capable of picking you apart because, let's face it, in the NFC, is he the best quarterback in the conference? He might be. He can still really sling it. And him and Sean McVay have a great relationship with how they see the game eye to eye from a head coach to quarterback standpoint. And the Niners are giving up 59% of 3rd down conversions this year. If they can't get off the field, that's a way for the Rams to march down the field with creative play calling and execution to score just enough points and to keep this Niners offense off the field. And we've seen so far that this Niners offense has struggled to find a rhythm. They look like a team that was without Trent Williams and without Brandon Ayuk that's been trying to patch everything up. And I thought that's something that Minnesota did so well last week is just keep this offense out of rhythm, both with blitzes, different coverages, but also the offense converting on 3rd downs and keeping San Francisco's offense under wraps because they're just on the sidelines. So those are some keys to the game for me. I think running the football is going to be really, really important. And it's something where I would just stick with it if it continues to work. You're trying to escape this win or escape this game with a win, and you're going up against a Rams team. You're banged up. They're even more banged up. All that matters is getting a dub. They haven't been able to stop the run. And the Niners, when they've run the ball, have been so successful. And that's a way to kind of help out this offensive line a little bit, which has been prone to struggling in their pass sets. So running the ball, getting off the field on 3rd down, getting after Matthew Stafford, and just cleaning things up defensively. Like way too many breakdowns on that back end. And if you're giving up 59% of 3rd down conversions, it's just going to be a really long year.
No doubt. Travis Stewart throws in $1.99. Thank you, Travis. Appreciate you, brother. I want to share the screen if I can here on the Shanahan question that I asked at the presser earlier in the week, and see if we can. Oh, there it is. And I'll see what you think of this. I thought this was an interesting answer. Here he is. Here's Shanahan. I asked him about the Rams. And, you think about the Rams, and the Rams have looked really bad, but the Rams are also really desperate, which kind of makes them kind of scary. And he kind of references that here. Here's Shanahan from earlier this week.
What is your assessment of the Rams, Kyle? They come into this game, you would think, pretty desperate.
Yeah, I think, anytime that you lose like they did, that's, and being 0-2, I know that feeling. And in the NFL, whether you lose 2 in a row after winning 10 in a row, or you start 0-2, if you lose 2 in a row in the NFL, that's always the kind of an Armageddon feeling in a building, especially when you lose lopsided like that. So, you know how teams come out the week after that. It's such a fine line in those things. We were a couple of plays away from the game going like that in Minnesota. So it can happen so fast. And all you got to do is watch the Detroit game the week before to see how good of a team this team can be. They'd taken it to overtime in the 5th quarter to get a chance to win, and how they had to come back to do that there at the end. So last week got out of hand a little bit early, especially the 4 plays they had on offense and just not getting started quick. But by no means was that an indication of what this team's going to be going through the rest of the year.
Assessment of
just just kind of beware of the Rams situation. They did look good in week 1 against the Lions. And then they kind of fell apart because of the injuries. Chase, I just look at the Rams as being a team that, especially over the last, let's say, decade under McVay, they've really invested in individuals, right? They had Ramsey and Stafford and Kupp and Aaron Donald and, all these great individual players. They won the Super Bowl. And now they have some amazing individual players. They still have Kupp, and now Puka Nacua, and Steve Avila is a dominating guard.
Mm-hmm.
They've got some really special players. Those guys all went down in the first couple of weeks. So there is no Puka, there is no Kupp, there is no Steve Avila, there is no John Johnson. The Rams are really compromised injury wise. So but they're desperate. And, they're going to come out fighting. Their season's kind of on the line. The numbers show you fall to 0-3 in this league. That's why the Ravens are interesting watch this week as well.
Yep.
You can't fall to 0-3 and make the playoffs typically. So to me, that's more than anything. You just got to fear the fact that the Rams are super desperate. They're at home. It's the home opener. They've got a burner in Tutu Atwell who can absolutely run right by George Odom and Jair Brown if that's the matchup he's going to get. So, to me, I feel like Sorensen didn't really have answers. Now, it's one thing to not have answers at the presser. It's another thing to not have answers when the game starts. So I don't need him to have answers at the presser, but I do need him to have answers when the game starts. And I want to say the Niners win this game big, but something tells me that this is going to be tight. Do you see a tight game or a one-sided game?
Yeah, with Kyle Shanahan talking about overtime in the 5th quarter, there's definitely an overtime joke to be had there, but I digress. Yeah, no, look, and I was going to say the same thing. Like, that Ravens-Cowboys game is so fascinating this week because Dallas doesn't want to fall to 1-2. They just got the doors blown off by the New Orleans Saints. And then the Baltimore Ravens, if they fall to 0-3 in the AFC North, that's a Super Bowl contending team that a lot of people like to play in New Orleans in February that could be out of it already. And for the Rams, they were hot to end last year. They won 7 of their last 8. They nearly beat Detroit in the wild card round. They lost that game by 1 in Matthew Stafford's return to Detroit. And what did they do this offseason? They really invested heavily in that offensive line. And we were talking about Note Boom, and we were talking about Steve Avila. They also paid Jonah Jackson, who's also not going to play in this game. And so they're a good football team, and you cannot take them lightly. And I know that Kyle Shanahan, for the most part, has been able to own Sean McVay outside of the 2021 NFC Championship game when the Niners lost another one of those patented 10-point leads in the 4th quarter, and Shanahan went on that run where he won 8-9 straight regular season games over McVay until the final week of the year last year. But McVay is one of the top head coaches in the league. Matthew Stafford is one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and every single week because of that, they are going to have a shot to pull off a win. And you factor in the desperation factor, you cannot take this team lightly. You can't expect to go out there and just walk over the Rams. I know they've been bad against the run. I know that their offensive line is broken down. They're without Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. But San Francisco is also wounded, and they're also coming off a very ugly loss against the Minnesota Vikings. And to Kyle Shanahan's point, a team can lose badly, come back the next week and play flawless football. Hopefully San Francisco is able to do that, but it's not going to be easy. And one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, all of Brock Purdy's haters, all of the Brock Purdy detractors who have said he's a product of Kyle Shanahan, he's a product of the offensive weaponry, he's not $60 million worthy for that contract that the Niners might have to pay him after this year because he's a dink and dunk quarterback and a system QB who's extremely limited. Well, what if Brock Purdy goes out there and elevates the offense? And what if over the next couple of weeks he has some flawless performances without Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle? Then what are people going to say? What if he goes out there and he adds a different dimension to this offense where he starts to use his legs a little bit more and he plays out of the offensive system and out of structure and he starts to impress in that manner and makes game-winning plays? I think it's pretty interesting how in his last 7 starts, he's 4-3 with, I think, 6 touchdowns and 6 picks. He's gone up against some really good defenses during that stretch, but if he wants to prove that he's an elite quarterback and worthy of that contract, now is your time to be able to prove it when you're throwing to the likes of still Brandon Ayuk, but Ronnie Bell and Jacob Cowing and Chris Conley and Jawan Jennings. I think that he's going to be able to find success because his tight window throw rate is the best in the NFL, and he's so accurate, and his anticipation, which is an elite quality, allows him to throw receivers open and find the tightest of windows. And I think that can play for the long haul for a franchise quarterback. But that's one of the underlying fascinating things that I'm looking forward to watching, because since he played in the preseason his rookie year, I've been a believer in Purdy, and I do think that he's a top 10 quarterback in the game. And now is his opportunity to prove it.
Yeah, I mean, and if you watch the highlights of this last game, I mean, yeah, he held the ball too long a few times. He turned the ball over a couple times. But he also put on just a freaking dime show down the field. I mean, he was dropping dimes left and right, absolutely putting the ball only where it needed to be put. I mean, he hit guys in stride. I hit one with JJ where he had the defender all over him. And the Niners receivers didn't have a lot of separation, and it makes it more important that Brock be accurate, and he has been. Running back wise, do you think this team needs to add a running back? Is there a back out there that you would target, Chase, as a, there's guys that you can trade for, Jeff Wilson and, Roshan Johnson or whomever, Miles Sanders. I mean, maybe Najee Harris. I mean, there's backs all around the league you could trade for. There's also backs you could pick off of practice squads. And then there's guys like, Kareem Hunt, if you did it this week and now he's a Chief, but Matt Breida, Leonard Fournette, Boston Scott, there's a few others out there. Is there a running back out there that you think there's a number of guys with reputations and guys, Leonard Fournette's played a lot in this league. Is there a running back out there that you think they will pick up at some point?
Interesting conversation, because right now you have Isaac Guerendo and Patrick Taylor as the backups with no Deebo now. And I know that you and I both saw that clip from Ted Wynn of The Athletic, who does some really good film breakdowns. And he said Isaac Guerendo just isn't ready to play. And the lone carry that he got, there was a hole that developed on that left side, and he kind of just ran forward and got tackled and stuff for a loss. I like his ability. I like the athleticism that he has. We're talking about a dude who's 6 feet 220, and he ran a 4.3 40-yard dash. The giddy up that he showed on that 93-yard return against the Raiders on the kickoff in the preseason was incredible. I thought he ran very well in the preseason. He can also catch the ball out of the backfield. But look, we've talked about this plenty too, you and myself. One college start, and it was his final game at Louisville during the bowl game. So he's an inexperienced player. I think that Patrick Taylor is more of a special teams player. On my show today, I talked about Khalil Herbert, who has 4 carries this year for the Chicago Bears. He's behind DeAndre Swift and Travis Homer. He's a capable running back, but he's not good in pass protection, and Kyle Shanahan hates that. You can throw out Raheem Mostert, who's hurt right now. He knows the scheme, and last year he was tied with Christian McCaffrey for the most touchdowns in the NFL for non-quarterbacks. And he ran for more than 1,000 yards, and he's flourished in Mike McDaniel's offense too, but he's always injured. Jeff Wilson is also on the Dolphins, but I think that he's kind of a mediocre running back. Leonard Fournette, I think he's more of a cooked product at this point. Miles Sanders of the Carolina Panthers, he dances too much in the backfield. And in this offense, he's just not a scheme fit, I don't think, because with that outside zone, you have to see hole, hit hole. So I think the Niners might make a move at running back. They might try to bide time to see what can happen with Christian McCaffrey and his recovery. You could throw out a name like Matt Breida, who I thought had some juice in that preseason opener against Tennessee. He knows this system as well. And I think that at that running back spot, it's so running back friendly, this offensive system, that if you find a good scheme fit, they can plug and play and they can be really impactful players.
It's an interesting thing to watch because, I mean, I love Mason and I wouldn't want to get anybody to stand in front of Mason getting carries, but at the same time, man, he takes some big hits and it's a long year. And I don't think Garendo's got running back instincts, and I don't know if Patrick Taylor can help you. I think probably if Mason went down, I think it would be time for Keyshawn Vaughn, to be honest. And I think Keyshawn Vaughn, who was, 5'10", 215 pounds, he never was a burner, always ran in the low 4.5s, but he was Mr. Football in the state of Tennessee as a high school senior. So he's no slouch, man. Once upon a time, this guy was celebrated in that state as a great player, and he went to Vandy and had a phenomenal career. So I like Keyshawn Vaughn, and I've seen him at practice, and he's got cutting ability and he's in shape. To me, Keyshawn Vaughn and Terrace Marshall might be the two guys I'd want to lean on if with these injuries that they have, just because they're not rookies cutting their teeth trying to figure it out. They're guys who have been in the league, who know what it takes to catch a pass or run between the tackles or run for a first down. So
what did Keyshawn Vaughn say to you when you interviewed him?
I mean, the interview was short because people turned the music up in the locker room and I could barely hear him. So I had to cut it short after like 3 or 4 minutes, but he's an interesting guy and just said that, that he's here, he's getting comfortable. He knows the system. He feels ready and ready to go if they need him. He's on the practice squad right now, but you can tell he's working out. He's keeping an eye on trying to get active. So I would imagine his name could be a name that we hear activated as soon as tomorrow. We'll see. But then there's also trade candidates, and you mentioned guys like Mostert and Jeff Wilson. I kind of like Roschon Johnson of the Bears, who's a young back. I kind of like Izzy Abanaconda from the Jets. The two names that are kind of interesting to me as well that I saw, Cleveland's got Dante Foreman and Pierre Strong. Mm-hmm. And Pierre Strong's, played at South Dakota State. He's got a lot of straight line speed, great receiver, kind of a big back who runs upright, but can really catch the ball and has great speed. And then Dante Foreman, I think he's just kind of an underrated player. He's got great size, great speed at that size. I think Dante Foreman could be a revelation in this Shanahan offense if they could get him. And I don't think it would take much to get him. So, but the other two guys I got to ask you about, because Dan Graziano's got an article up at ESPN right now, ESPN.com, about the trade deadline and, what players, 15 or 20 players could be out there and who they could be fits for. And the two guys that he's got right at the top of his article who could be out there and could be good fits for the 49ers, DJ Jones, we've mentioned many times, and Azeez Ojulari from the New York Giants, with the Giants looking like a developmental team. I don't know about you, Chase, but I think Azeez Ojulari is exactly what the Niners need. And I would be willing to give a pick for Azeez. The Niners had a different Azeez before, but so maybe the name Azeez is good luck. But Ojulari he's an electric, undersized speed rusher who, now that he's been in the league, has some moves. I think this is the right time to go after him.
Speaking of Azeez, man, Azeez Al-Shaair was flying around on Sunday night. Really fun to watch.
In the face too.
Yeah, exactly. And some people were calling for him to be suspended, but I love that type of edge. And I think that the Niners could use that right now because nobody really brought that outside of Fred Warner and Diamador Lenore last week. But Azeez Ojulari is a player who is extremely gifted. And when you think about edge rushers who are out there and expendable and trade targets from other teams, I'm always a fan of looking to bring those types of players to San Francisco because I've seen Kris Kocurek be able to maximize those players, groom and develop them, or help them turn their careers around. Like, everybody was calling Cleveland Ferrell a bust. Nobody believed that Charles Omenihu was going to be the highest paid edge rusher in free agency 2 years ago, but he was. Arden Key was a revelation for this team. Azeez Ojulari has a couple of gifts that are just rare, and that's twitch, speed, and bend off the edge. And he's a really talented player who has had some good moments for the New York Giants. And again, we talked earlier about Terrace Marshall. Sometimes when you're with a bad organization and it's chaotic, you just don't end up playing or performing that well because you're not in a good environment. Let me throw this out there, and I talked about this player on the Niners Report today. Haason Reddick is still holding out for the New York Jets, and he is not going to give you much as far as stopping the run or dropping back in coverage, and we saw Nick Bosa do a little bit of that last week, which was very interesting because he's never done that throughout his career. But the Niners have the most cap space in the NFL. It doesn't look like Haason Reddick is going to get things figured out with the New York Jets. Maybe he does at some point, but he's the only player holding out. $14.25 million is his salary this year. That's non-guaranteed. The Niners can pay him that. Of course, he's looking for a long-term deal, but what if you just give him that guaranteed money right from the rip? And you have Haason Reddick opposite of Nick Bosa, and then you sprinkle in Leonard Floyd, and you sprinkle in Yetur Gross-Matos, who I thought made some good plays last week against Minnesota, but he's kind of that hybrid defensive tackle edge rusher. That's a player that I think could really help this defense because what's happened so far? They've really struggled in trying to get to the quarterback consistently, and that's a player who in the last 4 years, he is 6th in the NFL in total sacks.
No, I love it. I love the idea. Graziano said the Cardinals, Niners, Buccaneers, and Bears are possible Reddick destinations. But yeah, no, it makes total sense. Here's why. The Niners have really a great group of young, talented DBs. Malik Mustafa, Jair Brown, Renardo Green, Darrell Luter. They got a bunch of young corners, a bunch of young DBs. What are you going to do to help a young DB? Get pass rush. What's a DB's best friend? Pass rush. What would Reddick give the Niners opposite Bosa? More pass rush. Yeah, so, I mean, the 49ers, I think when D. Winters gets healthy, that he might step in for Campbell. And I think the Collins-Hargrave duo potentially can get better. But yeah, their lack of defensive end depth is alarming. It's real. And if you really want to protect these young DBs and change the dynamic on defense, go get a Reddick. And who cares? You trade a 3rd round pick. Who cares? You traded 3 number 1s for Trey Lance. You know, you've shown that you can own day 3 of the draft and sign guys after the draft. You got one of the deepest rosters in the NFL on an annual basis. You'll have your 1st and 2nd round pick next year. This would be it. You're inside your Super Bowl window. Damn right. Yeah, I like that idea. Go get Reddick, stretch out that line, put a real speed rusher like a D Ford opposite Bosa. And I love, I love Leonard Floyd, but you know what? In week 2, he showed that he might not be able to bring it every week, and they may need to really spot him. And I don't know that they have the personnel to do that right now, but if you had a Reddick, he could take, if you have a Floyd at 20 snaps, he may give you the exact same thing that he gives you at 30 snaps. Yep. So how about limit him to 20 snaps and give those 10 snaps to Reddick? So yeah, I like that idea. And to me, I could see John Lynch going in that direction.
And then, you kind of move Yetur Gross-Matos to defensive tackle a little bit more. And unfortunately, like Javon Hargrave has just really continued to struggle. And the 4-year, $84 million contract that he got looks like a bad investment for San Francisco because he just doesn't really make many impactful plays. Like, when's the last time we said, oh, there's Javon Hargrave making a big play? It's been a little while. And I like Malik Collins, but look, Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd, like they're older players. And sometimes I like switching it up at defensive tackle where you go with that hybrid piece. And the Niners have done that a lot with the NASCAR package where you go with the defensive tackle with a quick get off who's really athletic and has some burst, and that can help you against the pass and against the run. And I think that Yetur Gross-Matos can give San Francisco that. We saw him draw that intentional grounding call on Sam Darnold. That was a big play at the time. And you just need more depth at edge and defensive end. Like Robert Beal, I just don't really see it. So you bring in a player like Haason Reddick, you give up a 3 for him, and I think he has good football left. So then, as you look into the future, Haason Reddick, Nick Bosa as your top 2 edge rushers, and then, I think Leonard Floyd has an option for that second year. Maybe you decide to bring him back. You sign Yetur Gross-Matos to a 2-year contract, and you can have some stable forces up front.
Hey, before we let you go, we are all fully aware that you cover the Niners and the Eagles for Chat Sports. Eagles get the Saints in week 3 after losing 22-21 to the Falcons at home on Monday night to wrap up week 2. What really stood out to me is that this Eagle defensive front 2 years ago was incredible. They had 1 sack and 2 hits on a relatively immobile 35-year-old quarterback. Milton Williams got their only sack. Yeah. I know they were playing without A.J. Brown, and I know with Carter had some Jalen Carter had some kind of suspension.
He was late to a team meeting, so he got benched. He didn't start, but he played the most snaps at defensive tackle, but he was late for a team meeting and didn't start.
What do you make of the Eagles so far? And then one of the names on that list that Graziano had was Devin White. Are they going to trade Devin White?
Man, it's weird. Like, this is a team that can't stop the run. They are giving up 6.4 yards per carry. They are 27th in sack rate, 28th in sack percentage, 29th in quarterback hits, tied for 32nd in yards per play allowed. And I know that Devin White analytically has really struggled in coverage, but what's one of his strong suits? It's pressuring the quarterback, and yet he's a healthy scratch last week. So maybe the Eagles make that adjustment, but they've invested a lot of money up front into that defensive line, and this is all on Howie Roseman. I mean, his fingerprints are all over this defense, and while he's made some highway robbery trades and he's a magician with the cat, he spent a first-round pick on Jordan Davis. He sucked. Jalen Carter, first-round pick. He's been so up and down. Today, he called his play trash this year. That's exactly what it's been. Nolan Smith was another first-rounder. They gave $34 million in guaranteed money to Bryce Huff. He has 1 assisted tackle through 2 games. So that's a lot of money invested up front, and the numbers speak for themselves. Eagles haven't been able to get to the quarterback. They can't stop the run, and now they go up against the Saints team that is tied for 4th for the most points scored ever through 2 games, led by former Niners pass game coordinator Clint Kubiak, and it's in New Orleans on a short week. So it could get ugly for Philadelphia. The good news is for the Eagles, Cowboys might be 1-2. The Giants and Commanders stink. So even if they lose, that division is still wide open. But the Eagles are a flawed team.
No C.J. Gardner-Johnson, right? No C.J. Gardner-Johnson either.
He has a foot injury, so not sure if he's going to play. A.J. Brown probably is not going to play again. So that further hurts them in this game for sure.
Dude, we love streaming with you on Fridays. What do you got cooking between now and Sunday? And how has the in-game stuff been going for you?
Yeah, it's always a blast coming on here. It's been great for my brand and my show, and I hope it's been good for yours as well. I look at the numbers and I see the shows that do well. The shows do well, and I saw some people in the comment section saying I like the older generation, Larry, and the new generation with Chase. So I think we do have a good little mix there to give the viewers something good talking Niners every week. But
no, dude, what I love your hustle, dude. I mean, I love the hustle. You're like me, dude. You grind, and you don't take, you're like Belichick, no days off.
No days off. Like today's an off day, but I gotta hop on with you, and I just get the itch to like do content and to talk ball because this is what I've wanted to do since I was 5 years old. And I've been in radio, television, podcasting, just kind of working my way up. So now to have a big platform talking NFL, both with my channels and then my own brand, so to speak, personally, like it's just awesome. And I feel as though I got to give the people something every single day, because if I don't, then other people are going to surpass me, and I wouldn't be happy about that. So yeah, I talked some trade targets today on the Niners Report, and then I have a couple of more segments coming out this week. I took a look at why Kyle Shanahan struggles against Brian Flores, Steve Spagnuolo, and Jim Schwartz, and why this offensive line continues to struggle. So be on the lookout for that, more content. And then obviously the watch parties, we do those every game day. We did 280,000 views week 1, and then almost 200,000 views last week. So, nobody really comes close to our watch party numbers. I kind of get lucky because you guys are at the game and I'm doing the watch party, so it's less competition, but we take advantage of that and we have a lot of fun.
Dude, keep it rolling, man. Everybody follow Chase on Chat Sports. Niner fan, Eagle fan. His content is outstanding. Have a great day, everybody. I'm headed downstairs. I'm going to go. Kyle Shanahan's going to speak. We're going to hit the locker room. Grant Cohn and I are going to stream around 2. I'm doing Niners Nightly tonight at 6 on KMBR's YouTube channel. So a busy day. The grind never ends. No days off.
I love it, man.
No days off.
Keep
Chase,
at
good
it.
to see you.
You
Good to see you,
too.
bro.
See ya.
Peace, everybody. Thanks to Better. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. We're out.